Megan. Thank you guys for having me. Is it okay if I close this laptop and use this table, or will it? Okay. Thanks for having me this morning. I don't usually get up this early. I'm a game developer and a magician, so I'm kind of an evening person. You know, on the way down here, when I talk, when I'm asked to present, sometimes I have ideas like right before the moment, some new things I wanted to add. Unfortunately, when I was driving down, I realized that because it's dangerous to text and drive, it's actually illegal to type on our phones. But apparently there's no law against writing things out in long form, so I have a little notepad. I have a Tesla, it was autopilot, I was not endangering anyone. I thought I'd start, actually, can you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
Is it okay if I go without a mic?
Yeah.
I think you guys can hear me, right?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll work without a mic. I thought I'd begin, first of all, thanks for the introduction, and yeah, it is true, before I became a game developer, I am a magician. I performed at the Magic Castle in Hollywood. I actually have my own theater up in Frisco, and we do live magic shows and variety arts every month up there. And I even dress like a magician, so forgive the jacket. It's actually my wife who dresses me. It's probable that I've never bought my own article of clothing in my life. I'm like the opposite of Dobby the house elf, where I just want people to give me clothes, and if you give me clothes, I'll probably be latched onto you forever. My wife's the greatest. She bought everything, and clothes just shows up in my closet. I walk into my closet and it's like, wow, that's an amazing shirt, or wow, what an incredible jacket. This is a brand new jacket. I have no idea how much she paid for it or where she got it, but what do you think? It's pretty slick, right? It's pretty nice, right? You guys like it? Yeah. So I thought I'd begin with actually a bit of magic, because I think there's a relationship between magic and video games and all of creativity, and I thought this might be helpful to start this way. But I do need some help from someone in the audience. I'll tell you what, I'm going to, okay, I'm going to toss this to you, and I'm going to ask you to hand this to someone else. Let me get my pen. What's your name?
Lane.
Lane, would you mind standing up? Yeah, and Lane, you can look at the, Lane's going to help us. She's going to be our designated volunteer. Lane, I need you to do a couple of things. The first thing we're going to do is I want you to think, or tell me a number between 1 and 10. I'm going to write it down so we don't forget. And also you're going to be picking 3 other people that are going to help us. All right? 2 other people. So let's start with the first number. What's the first number, Lane?
Okay, 3.
3. And pick someone else from the audience. You can throw the paper at them. Okay, great. And what's your name?
Mary.
Barry? Mary. Okay, and can you tell me a number between 1 and 10?
4.
4. So we have 3 and we have 4. And can you and you want to pick someone else at random? Toss the paper. Yeah.
Ready?
There we go. And what's your name?
Tom.
Sorry? Tom. And a number between 1 and 10? 9. And Lane, would you mind helping me for the last bit? You can hand the paper back to Lane. I have 349. Imagine we're talking about money, and this is $349. And how many cents, Lane? How many cents? 24. So we have $349.24. Lane, would you mind joining me on stage here for a minute while and give Lane a round of applause. Okay, so Lane, we have $349.24. You have an important job. Do you remember the price tag on the back of my jacket? I'm going to turn around and I want you to read out loud the price that's written on the price tag.
$349.24.
Thank you so much. I'll give you the choice. I can do one more demonstration of magic, or I can get right into some boring stuff. Which okay, let's get someone else to help me for this one. Let me set it up first. I am fascinated with numbers. And one of my favorite numbers is the irrational number pi. You guys familiar with pi? Last month was March. We had Pi Day on March 14th because it's 3.14. That's 3.141. Of course, pi goes on, 3.141596. You know, actually, I've actually memorized 10,000 digits of pi, and I did this for the purposes of a magic trick. It was going to be a mentalism trick, much like what you just saw. The method was, I have this book that I bought off of Amazon.com called 10,000 Digits of Pi. And what I was going to do was say, we need to pick a random number. And I don't want the number to be something that you think of. I want it to truly be not random. And there's nothing more random than pi. You see, random is encompassed within pi because it is an infinite sequence of random digits. It goes on literally to infinity, which is the largest possible thing you could imagine. Every possible combination of numbers is somewhere within pi. What that means is every one of our birthdays is in pi. Right? It also means that if you think about an image in a digital form, like represented as numbers, right, where the color and the position of a pixel might be represented as numbers, every picture that you can imagine is in pi. The very first image that we ever saw when we were all born is encompassed within pi. The last image we will ever see before we die is inside of pi. It's already there. Every video game I've ever made is inside of pi. Every video game I have yet to make is already there, so if I could just find it, I don't even have to work anymore. That'd be great. But this is a really fun tool that I could use for sentimentalism. My premise was going to be, I wanted the number picked at random. I would get somebody up on stage and they'd say, don't even think of a number, find one in this book of random digits. And all I had to do was know what page they're looking at, and if I've memorized pi, then I would know what sequence was at the beginning of that page. I learned, though, that as a magic trick, as a mentalism trick, it's not that fun, but as a memory demonstration, it's actually kind of cool to watch. So I need someone to help me. We'll start. Do you want to help me? Okay, what's your name?
Scott.
Scott, come on up here. Scott, check this out. Make sure it is what it claims to be. It's a book with just nothing but numbers in it, right? And I'm going to pick somebody. Can I pick you?
Yeah.
I'm just going to stare at you when we do the part where it's impossible, because otherwise people will think I'm like looking at a Confederate or I've got like some magic piece of technology that's going to give me a look at. I don't have to look at you just yet.
Okay.
We'll do it in a second. So flip through the book. If staring makes you uncomfortable, I can pick someone else. All right, so we're gonna lock eyes. All right. Okay, so also verify at the beginning of the book, there's an introduction. It talks about the history of pi. It also talks about that the world record for memorizing pi is a Chinese woman who she's memorized over 65,000 digits. There's only 10,000 digits in this book, and I've memorized it. I've indexed it by page number and in sections of 2,500. You'll notice there's a bookmark. That's at around the 7,500 mark. I'm not quite great beyond that. So if you'll help me out, we'll go before the bookmark. And so I want you to look up a random page. Okay, now we're looking. Okay, so your job is to make sure I'm not looking at anything that you okay? All right, and I'm going to be thinking and concentrating. Okay, so I want you to find a random page number. And when you find that random page number, if you tell me what page you're on, I can tell you what the first three digits are.
Okay.
What page number are you on?
55.
Page 55. Sorry, I was looking away just for a second. I'm going to try not to. Page 55. The first digit on page 55. Okay. This is tough. It might be better if I stare off into space. The first digit is, I might get this wrong. Is it an 8?
Is not me.
Okay, sorry about this, would you mind picking a different page for me?
Yeah.
You got this. I haven't done this in about a month, you gotta stay fair.
All right, let's do page 51.
51. Is the first digit on that page a 0?
Yes.
Okay, and the next digit is a 5? No, it's a 9.
It's a 9.
It's a 9. And the next digit is a 7. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, so maybe I memorized the first 3 digits on at least one page. Let's make it a bit harder. Would you mind picking someone else at the audience random? Let's make it a bit harder. Pick somebody else at random. Someone I don't know.
Oh, I don't.
He knows me. Great. Would you mind helping me? Come on up. We're going to do this, make this a little bit more challenging. This time, flip through the book, and instead of looking at a page number, I want you to find a random number in the middle of some page. You're not even going to tell me the page number. I'm going to pick up a sequence. You're going to tell me a few numbers in a row, and then I'll be able to continue the sequence from there. You've memorized sequences, like we all know the alphabet, correct? If I were to say LMNOP, you could naturally and immediately say, right. So that's how a sequence works. If I have the sequence, conceivably you should be able to start at any number in that book. Don't start at the top or the bottom or the front or the back. Just start somewhere in the middle. You can start wherever you like, but you're going to start, and I'm going to ask you for the digits one at a time very slowly. Sometimes I can get it in 4 digits because there's only a few places where 4 digits, it's the only time those 4 digits appear in a row. Other times it takes a few more sequences. The most it usually takes me is about 7 digits before I can pick up the sequence. Do you understand? So I'll ask you for the digits one at a time. Once I have the sequence, I will tell you what comes next, and I'll just keep going until we're all bored.
Okay. What if I go backwards?
No, you want to go forward? I could, but it's harder. Like, you could say the alphabet backwards, but it takes, you have to think about it. I could do it that way, but it might take me more time. So if it's okay, we'll go forward. Okay. You can test me backwards after, if you like. Okay, so find a digit. You got one?
Yes.
Okay, don't tell me the page number. Tell me the first digit.
0.
Next digit.
8.
Okay, next digit.
4.
Okay, next digit.
9.
Hold on. You said 9?
9.
Okay, next digit.
0.
Okay, is the digit after that a 3?
What do you guys think?
Is it?
Is it?
Tell me.
Yes.
Okay, now I have the sequence. I'm going to tell you the digits one at a time. Just confirm that I have them right. If I get one wrong, you can stop me, okay? So after the 3 is another 8. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, then 5.
Yes.
Then 4.
Yes.
Am I right?
Yes, you are.
Okay. And then 0.
Yes.
5.
Yes.
1.
Yes.
3.
Yep.
8.
Yep.
6.
Yep.
5.
Yep.
0.
Yep.
9.
Yep.
4. Right?
Yes.
Okay. 1.
Yes.
3. 0. 5. I'm looking up there. I'm sorry. I'm supposed to be looking at you. I'm concentrating. And then 4. 8. 1. 2. 9. 0. Are you bored yet? I can keep going. Okay.
the next page.
Oh, you flipped the page. All right. Well, that's enough then. Thank you so much. Would you mind picking one more person? We're going to do one more thing with this. Someone I don't know. Someone I don't know. Hi. What's your birthday? Yeah.
Halloween.
So October 31st?
Yes.
I'm going to see if I can find where that is in the book.
Okay.
October 31st. It takes me a second. That's 0831. That is not in the first 10,000 digits. My birthday's also not all our birthdays are. Sorry? 1031. You're right. Crap, that one's also not in there. We could pick some. You know what? Actually, you know what is in there? 3110. So if we pretend we're in Europe.
Okay.
Okay, that's in the first 10,000 digits. Let me find it. 311. Let me find it. 3110. Let's see. 3110. It's on page 183. And it actually, I think it's on the first line of 183. Go to page 183.
Yeah, it's all the way back here.
It's past the bookmark,
It
which
is
is
past
harder.
the bookmark. Okay.
Page 183,
Uh-huh.
the first line, is it right in the middle?
01113.
The middle, the four middle digits.
The 4 middle digits. Oh,
You're looking for 3110. Is that the 4 digits in the middle on the
I
top?
don't see it.
Okay, hold on. Let me see if I can. Let me do that. It's past the bookmark, so. Page 183,
Mm-hmm.
and you're on the top one?
Yeah. It's 1113 instead of
crap.
1013.
I'm close.
You're so
I might miss it. I might miss this one. Should we? I'll tell you what. If anybody wants to try their birthday, I'll see if we can find it. But we got close. Thank you so much. So what was that all about? Well, it was hopefully a little bit entertaining. But there was a couple things that I wanted to show there. There's this relationship that I discovered between magic and video games, and I think it relates to all entertainment and maybe other forms of creative mediums. The first thing is about the deal that we make with our audience. And in a video game, we have to make this deal without being there. But in most interactions, especially creative interactions, we have to make a deal with our audience. And the deal is something like this. Come along with me, follow my rules, come down my line of logic, enter this world that I'm offering you. And if you participate in this, if you come along with me, there will be some payoff for you in the end. In the case of magic, it's a sense of wonder. In the case of video games, it might be a sense of gratification from overcoming a challenge. Or maybe some emotion from experiencing a story, if it's storytelling. There's all kinds of different examples of this in all creative mediums. But that deal is critical to having that relationship with the audience. And if you don't make that deal successfully, they won't come along with you, and they won't enjoy what you're giving them in the end. The cynical mind, when it consumes entertainment, has not committed to that deal, to that bargain. And there's a formula for making this deal. The formula involves starting by establishing your credibility. The first step you have to do is prove that you're worthy of the time. People will not give you much time before they rule out your content or your media. They won't give you much time at all, especially in today's world where there's so much content and there's so much information and there's so many choices for how we could use our time. Now, you all make great choices. Would you like me to go back to the mic?
Is that okay?
Okay, that's fine. You all make great choices because you're here today. So you're amongst the smaller percentage of people, but most people are happy to just move on as fast as possible. So you have to establish your credibility. Now, in speaking, we use a joke. I made a joke about writing things down longhand as opposed to texting and driving. And then I did a magic trick. So you're engaged, right? You think, okay, and the first trick was fast, and it proved itself out, which allowed you to give me some rope for the hard thing that's kind of new to me, which I miss some of the time, right? When you're memorizing 10,000 digits of pi, you're gonna miss. So I needed that rope from you. I needed that length of leeway from the credibility I earned so that I can take some risks and try some things with you. But you have to establish your credibility out of the gate. The faster you establish your credibility, then the more likely that your audience is going to be with you. The next thing that you can do is validate that promise. You have to prove that you're going to give folks what they're in for. That's what I'm doing right now, right? I'm starting the content of the speech. I'm giving you value. Hopefully some of the things that I've learned that I think are lessons that have been useful to me might be new ways of thinking about things you probably already know, or maybe they might be new discoveries for you. But right now I'm validating that I'm here to do what this is all about. I'm trying to give you some value from my experience. The next step, the last step, is to actually deliver the goods. If you go through the whole process, right, you've got them coming along with you and you carry them to the end, and the punchline sucks, and the end is not going to leave us with this feeling that we got value for our time, then we're not going to want to continue the relationship with that creator. Right? That creator's kind of dead to us if they don't deliver the goods. So it's establish credibility, validate the promise, and then deliver the goods. And this is about delivering success, getting success with whatever the audience is for whatever we're creating. The definition of success that I use is to provide greater value to the audience than the resources they had to expend in order to consume what I offered. And it's not just cash, right? Yes, when I make video games, I sell them. People spend their money, but they also give an inordinate amount of time. How many people have heard of one of our video games, Borderlands? Wow, okay, a lot of you guys, thanks. So we have players that have played Borderlands for over 3,000 hours. It is insane how much time people have invested. That's a massive commitment. That's very validating. I call that a success. But to achieve that is humbling in some ways. And I think that the secret to the perception of quality in the audience's mind has nothing to do with what we usually think of when we think of quality. And quality is the key to succeeding at that metric that I just offered for success. And it's not, usually we think of quality like in a video game, we might think of how rich are the materials or the textures in the environment, how much visual detail is there, right? If you think about quality in a film, maybe you're judging the CG scenes or just the overall production value. If you're watching a Michael Bay movie, it might be how many explosions per minute. But that's not what quality is. Quality in the minds of our audiences and our customers and our spectators and whoever's consuming what we're creating is really about how the result measures up to the expectation. Quality is a function of expectations. It explains how an independent game that has very low production values, that might have been created by a couple of folks working out of their own home, with pixelated, like 8-bit graphics, can get a very high score by critics, and a massive production with incredible production values, where tens of millions of dollars are spent in development, can get low scores in critical reviews. It has nothing to do with production values. It has to do with a function of expectation. A game that has very high expectations could have incredible production values, but if it delivers below that expectation, it's gonna be received poorly. A game with zero expectation or low expectation will be received wonderfully if what comes out is better than that zero starting point. So if you can start whenever you offer anything by just lowering expectations as low as possible, you're more likely to achieve success with your audience. And that's a valuable lesson that I've learned. I was thinking about the other thing that I wanted to share has to do with choice. Now you remember after I did the first thing with the price tag, I pretended to offer you a choice. I said, would you like to see another bit or should I get right into the content? Of course, I kind of knew in advance what would happen, but I actually forced that. It didn't matter what the audience response was. If the audience response was, let's get into the content, I had a slightly different intro, and I would have done the same thing with the book about pie. It's called a magician's force, and it's the oldest trick in the book. To say A or B, and whichever one you choose, I'm going to still do the same thing, but I'm going to make it sound like it was your option. It's a classic technique. And the reason why we do it isn't because we think that fools anybody, but because choice is engaging. Choice is important. And here's the catch. It doesn't even matter if the choice is meaningful or not. There's actually science on this. There was a study that was published in the Journal of Personality and Social Psychology not too long ago. It's called Can One Desire Too Much of a Good Thing? That was the title of the article in which this the study was published. And of course there's a synopsis and a write-up. It's a scientific journal, peer-reviewed. And then there's the data, of course, which you can get from the researcher's website if you're interested in it. But they did an interesting experiment. What they did is they went into some grocery stores and they exploited the free samples that we expect to get in a grocery store. And in one set of grocery stores, they placed 24 free samples for a particular food type. In a different grocery store, they used 6 samples, just 6. It turned out that in the grocery stores where there are 24 options, 60% of the people that walked by and noticed the options actually stopped to browse what those options were. In the case of only 6 options, only 40% of the people stopped. So if you have more choices to offer, more people will check it out. Now here's where it gets weird. In the case of 24 samples, where 60% of the people stopped, only 3% of those people that stopped made a purchase decision. That means out of every 100 people that walked by, only 2 made a purchase. Meanwhile, in the case where there was only 6 choices, it turned out that 31% of the people that stopped made a purchase. So this is the conclusion. We are attracted to the idea of lots of options. But when we're confronted with actually making a choice, the fewer the options we have, the more likely it is that we'll be able to decide. We get befuddled when we have to make a choice when we have too many options. But we are attracted to the idea of lots of options. So I exploited this in the Borderlands video game. One of the things that Borderlands is about, it's this kind of lawless, Old West kind of sci-fi world where you can actually be a good guy by killing people and taking their stuff. I had to create a universe to make that okay because we wanted a game that's about the growth of the character and about collecting loot. And in the case of Borderlands, the loot is guns. And the promise we made in marketing the game was, it's kind of a tongue-in-cheek, kind of comedic game. The promise we made was 87 bazillion guns. Right? 87 bazillion. Wow, that's a lot of options. That sounds pretty good. I want to check that out. But when you actually play the game, the first time you're presented with a choice, where there's some guns that open up in a chest that you open, there's only 2 guns there. They're both pistols. They are mathematically identical. One pistol has a higher rate of fire and more bullets. The other pistol has a lower rate of fire but higher accuracy. So mathematically, it's delivering about the same amount of damage per second to the targets in the game. But it's still a choice. It's a binary choice, A or B. And that binary choice is much easier, more comfortable for people to make. And I leveraged the science for that. And of course, the game was very successful. I think not only because of that idea, but it's an idea I think all of us can employ. Let me demonstrate another place where the same kind of psychology is at work. Because once you can get someone to make a choice, you've got them. They actually upgrade their love for the choice that they make when someone makes a choice. Also, if they're choosing between 2 things, they downgrade the choice that they did not make. I first happened upon this in that game Borderlands because we collect metrics. We can see how many players chose which gun and what their behavior was after the fact. The players that chose the gun that has a higher rate of fire and more damage per shot tended to choose more run and gun or spray and pray kind of loot choices as they played the game. Whereas the players that chose, and they ended up with guns like shotguns and machine guns later on in the game, the players that chose the pistol that favors accuracy ended up choosing things like sniper rifles later in the game, lower rates of fire and more precision. They actually, and we thought, well, they're just showing us what their preference was out of the get-go. No, in fact, the science suggests that they were creating their preferences and creating their identities with each choice that they made. Here's a study that's very interesting, and I'll show you how this works. This guy, Dan Gilbert, who is the head professor of psychology at Harvard University, he wrote a book called On Happiness. I highly recommend it. I love this book. There's a lot of great stuff in there about what makes us happy. But he did this really interesting study where he went into a hospital where people have no short-term memory. There's the problem that you can create in your own brain, usually because people drink far too much alcohol. They destroy their ability to create new short-term memories. And he performed this experiment. I'm going to show you what it is quickly. I have some props here, courtesy of the sponsors, High Brew Coffee. So it turned out there were 6 different coffees, so I asked for one of each. So I'm going to pull these out right here. So what you do is, and here's how I actually did the experiment at my company with a focus test group. And what we did was, we brought a bunch of testers, and I had swag. I had free gifts that we were going to offer, and we had pictures of what these free gifts were. And what we did at first was we took all our focus testers, our user research subjects, and we showed them the choices. And we said, of these choices, of these 6 things, we'd like you to rank them. We're thinking about giving away free stuff, and we want to know what you think is the most valuable and the least valuable of the free stuff. So we asked them to rank them, and let's pretend that these are the rankings here. I've got 6 different colored coffees, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Meaning that they think this is the best and this is the least best. Take all you ask them to do it quickly, don't think a whole lot about it, just write down the ranking or sort the pictures and then take that away. Then we actually engaged them with what we were there for. We did some user research testing, they played some video games, we asked them some questions, we watched their behaviors. We let about an hour go by. Then we had somebody come in and say, hey, we actually have a couple of these things. And we want you to pick one that you can have and take home with you today. And the ones that we showed them were the ones that they ranked number 3 and number 4, the middle ones. And we said, pick one of the 2, and you can keep it. Now they picked the one that they ranked number 3. They ranked it higher than number 4, and they remember that, kind of. So they tend to pick number 3. And then we give them that item. They get to keep it. And then we take the other one away. Then we do another hour, hour and a half of game playing and more user research. They've forgotten about the ranking they did at the beginning, and all they really remember is the object they have. Then we have someone come back in and we say, hey, the person that asked you to rank these, they actually dropped all the cards, they got shuffled up. Can you do it again for us? Sorry, we lost the data. Can you do it again? This time, something very interesting happens. They sort them again, but what they do is they take the object they picked, the one they picked as number 3 originally and that they decided to keep, and they upgrade it. This time it's ranked as number 2. The one that they didn't pick, they downgrade that. That's now ranked not 4, but ranked 5. The thing they don't like goes down, and the thing they liked goes up. They've changed their ranking of these things. Now, Dan Gilbert performed the same experiment with people with 0 short-term memory, and the same exact results happened. It's incredible, right? It suggests that the brain is actually changing. The decision-making process is changing by favoritism. And we see this behavior in other aspects of the world, right? Like Coke and Pepsi people. Coke people hate Pepsi but love Coke, and Pepsi people hate Coke but love Pepsi. Ford and Chevy, pick your poison. Democrat, Republican. It doesn't matter. We want the choice we make, we upgrade, and the choice we reject, we downgrade. And this is a vulnerability in human reasoning that can be exploited by creatives. And we exploit this in our video games. It's just the way the world works. So ignore it at your peril. But I thought that was an interesting thing about decision making. When we're in the world where we actually have the audience's attention and we're asking them to make choices, we can play that game with them. But if you think about the consequences of that in a competitive world, like the Coke and Pepsi example, or in my world, it's like fanboyism with the consoles, like there's Xbox people and there's PlayStation people, and they hate one another, and they think that the other ones are terrible decision makers. This fanboyism is a real phenomenon. I don't want my video games, before they've started consuming them, to fall into that same this or that choice. So in some cases, it's best to actually avoid choice. When you're competing with other things, or the mind share of your audience, you want to eliminate the possibility of a choice as much as possible. Because if they don't choose you, they will be downgrading you, and you don't want to be downgraded. The quote that I love from a book that Jerry Garcia wrote, Jerry Garcia, frontman for the Grateful Dead, this guy wrote a really intelligent book about business. And there was this one idea that came out to me. This isn't an exact quote, I'm going to paraphrase it, but if you read the book, you'll get this thesis in there. And the thesis is, you don't want to be the best at what you do. You want to be the only ones that do what you do. And if you're the only one, and that kind of explains like how the Grateful Dead is the way they are, right? There's no one like them in the world. But if you're the only ones in the world that are doing what you're doing, there's no one to compete with. You will never be downgraded as a choice. I love this idea. When we created Borderlands, we blended genres. We entered into a space that no one had entered in before. And as a consequence, we avoided a this or that choice, and we created a yes or no choice. And it was just our job in marketing to try to convince people to say yes. The original property that I created before I created Borderlands was a video game called Brothers in Arms. And this was a World War II military action shooter game. And I was in a market where there was another series called Call of Duty and another series called Medal of Honor. And my game had, the first game we launched had the highest reviews of the 3 and also had the best sales of the 3. But we were being outmarketed, and I thought, you know what? I don't want to go into a stand-up fight. Electronic Arts and Activision decided to go head-to-head and invested a huge amount of money to figure out which one of these 2 brands would be the winner. Ultimately, it was Call of Duty, and they gave up. The EA guys gave up on Medal of Honor. I didn't even want the fight, so we diverted all of our resources towards Borderlands to create something that we had no competitor for. And now those guys are trying to compete with us. Activision created a game called Destiny that tries to snipe at the space we created with Borderlands a bit. And it's a great game, you should check it out if you like video games and make good choices. Borderlands is still better, but let's see. How do you find those original things? How do we find them? This is the last thought I'm going to leave you with. The technique that I use is by finding something that works in one place and thinking about if there's any other way to apply it to something that hasn't been imagined yet. And let me give you an example that I like. This example comes from a guy named Robert Schiller, who is the professor of finance at Yale, and he wrote a book, and in it, he makes this really interesting, he reveals this very interesting discovery that that the Mayans invented the wheel. But they did not invent the wheel for the purpose of moving things around. They had no carts. They had no like platforms with logs under them to move heavy rocks. They built ziggurats and pyramids larger than the Egyptians, but they never used the wheel as a tool. Yet they invented them. Every wheel we've ever found in Mayan culture is on a toy. On a tiny pool toy. There's no wheel, there's no examples of a wheel. They invented the wheel, but did not have the idea to use them as a tool. It's astonishing that a culture as amazing as the Mayans did not make that leap. They had the technology, they invented the technology, they didn't make the leap. We think silly Mayans, primitive minds, right? I'd like to remind us that up until 1988, none of us had wheels on our luggage. I carried around a bag that was very heavy with a crappy handle and kept me off balance. In 1988, a pilot thought, maybe we should put a wheel on this. I'm carrying this bag multiple times a day. I'm a pilot. I'm going in and out of these airplanes. I can make this better. One guy in 1988 had the idea. Up until that point, 1988 wasn't that long ago. Up until that point, our entire species had not come up with this thought that maybe we should put wheels on our luggage. What that tells us is there's a lot of opportunity to discover these connections that haven't been made yet. Look at something that works in one place and imagine if it can go somewhere else. That's what we do with our video games, and I think it's brought us a great deal of success. And after all, Picasso reminds us that a good artist will borrow, but a great artist will steal. So it's absolutely fine. If Picasso can do it, this in fact is good for our species. We should all be doing it. That's what I have to share with you guys. Thank you so much for your time.